For the US battle planners, the next logical step in the land campaign was the Japanese island of Okinawa. It lay a mere 350 miles from the Japanese homeland islands. The island was defended by more than 120,000 men. The Japanese commander, General Mitsuru Ishijima, was determined to turn it into an American graveyard. Once again, Admiral Nimitz, the US commander in the region, assembled a huge fleet. It included 40 aircraft carriers and 18 battleships. The opening bombardment of Okinawa began on March the 23rd, 1945. It lasted for a whole week. Finally, on the morning of April the 1st, the assault boats headed for the shore. To their surprise, they met almost no opposition. By nightfall, 60,000 men had landed, and the beachhead was up to 2 miles deep. For the next 2 days, the US forces built up their strength and pushed across the island. Again, opposition was unexpectedly light. By April the 4th, the Japanese defenders had been split in two. Marine divisions now headed north. Army units pushed south. The Marines continued to meet only sporadic resistance, and within 3 weeks had cleared the northern part of the island. But it was a different story in the south. There, the army units ran into savage fire. For 10 days, the Japanese held their defensive line. Then, when they could hold out no longer, they simply withdrew to the next defensive position and continued to resist all over again. Meanwhile, the Japanese also prepared to launch an air assault on the invasion fleet. Early on the morning of April the 7th, kamikaze pilots gathered to drink their ritual cups of sake and climb into their aircraft for the last time. Over 700 aircraft, half of them kamikazes, took off and approached the US landing fleet. A line of radar-equipped destroyers, operating about 50 miles out at sea, was hit first. By the end of the first day of the attack, 2 US destroyers had been sunk. "24 other vessels were also damaged. But the Japanese had lost over 300 planes. Over the following days, the Japanese introduced a new weapon. The Oka, or cherry blossom, was a rocket-powered suicide missile driven by a kamikaze pilot. It was launched from a bomber and carried a massive 2,650-pound warhead. On April the 12th, another US destroyer was hit and sunk. The Oka looked deadly, but US fighters quickly learned to intercept and shoot down the bombers that carried them. In desperation, the Japanese Navy now sent a suicide mission of its own. The Yamato, Japan's largest battleship, was loaded with just enough fuel to reach Okinawa and ordered to fight to the death, sinking as many US ships as possible in the process. But as the giant ship approached Okinawa, it was spotted. Some 400 US aircraft descended on it. Within 2 hours, it blew up. The fireball could be seen for over 100 miles. Back on Okinawa, torrential rain now turned the battlefield into a quagmire. For over a month, US troops struggled to push their way south. Every cave or dugout entrance had to be blasted by flamethrowers, grenades, and explosives. As before, as one defensive line was overrun, the Japanese slipped back to another, and the whole grim business would start again. US casualties rapidly mounted. Finally, on June the 1st, the town of Shuri was captured. Then on June the 4th, a new contingent of Marines landed to the south of Naha, the island's capital, and linked up with troops pushing down from the north. Savage fighting continued, but by June the 17th, the Japanese resistance was collapsing. Five days later, the Americans finally secured Okinawa. The Japanese commander, General Ishijima, committed ritual suicide, harakiri. Over 7,000 prisoners were taken, the first time ever that such large numbers of Japanese troops had surrendered. It had been a bloody and exhausting campaign. 100,000 Japanese soldiers and some 40,000 civilians had been killed. The Americans, for their part, had lost over 15,000 men. It was a sobering reminder of what would await the American forces if they invaded the main Japanese home islands. More than ever, they needed a solution. A way to obliterate Japan's will to fight, once and for all.